I think a lot of the tension when it comes to sustainability and travel, as well as in other industries, is about how do we minimize the negative impact? And I think that's important, but it's also, there's just natural limits. There's only so much you can do, especially when aviation is such a contributor. And instead, I think what we really try to emphasize at Root Adventures is how do we actually maximize the positives? So when people come back to their normal lives, how does that positive impact carry forward in their behavior and how they vote, just different decisions that are made?
Hello and welcome back to the Outdoor Minimalist podcast. I'm your host, Meg Carney, and I'm an outdoor and environmental writer and author of the book, Outdoor Minimalist, Waste Less Hiking, Camping, and Backpacking. The Outdoor Minimalist podcast has the goal to give listeners actionable ways to waste less hiking, camping, backpacking, and more during every step of their process. Your impact outdoors starts long before you hit the trail and goes beyond leave no trace ethics. You'll learn how to identify sustainable outdoor brands, how to ask hard questions regarding sustainability, and begin to shift and evolve your mindset to integrate minimalism into all of your outdoor pursuits. If you listen to this podcast, I assume that you love outdoor adventure and likely you travel. Although we may love to visit new places and schedule new adventures each year, probably multiple times a year, it's no secret that traveling is not a very sustainable practice. So, in episode 137 of the Outdoor Minimalist podcast, we answer the question, if travel isn't sustainable, should we just stop doing it? To help answer this question and help explore how we can maximize the positive impacts of traveling, we get to hear from Breanne and Dave Kiefner, two travel experts and founders of Root Adventures. Utilizing her decades of experience in adventure travel and hospitality businesses, Breanne sought to create something fundamentally different. Root Adventures has continued to evolve in line with Breanne's own mental health journey. The COVID travel pause provided the space for her to redefine the company with all that she learned along with her own personal journey. Her history of PTSD, dyslexia, and depression continues to define her vision and leadership style as company CEO, as she infuses vulnerability through all aspects of the company. Now, with over 2 decades of experience in the travel industry, she is confident that this work is exactly what has been missing from adventure travel. Dave applies his expertise in business operations and continuous improvement to manage the back end of Root Adventures. Having previously worked in renewable energy and the recycling industry, he now guides the Root Adventures sustainability practices. An adventurer at heart, he has also experienced the transformative nature of mindfulness and is enthusiastic for others to experience transformative travel as well. Thank you, Breanne and David, for joining me on the Outdoor Minimalist podcast today. I'm excited to talk about all things in adventure tourism and kind of a different spin, I think, on travel than people are used to hearing. So I think to get us started, could you both just introduce yourselves for the listeners and then also include what got you interested in outdoor recreation and adventure travel?
I'm Breanne, and I am the founder of Root Adventures. We are a mindful travel company focused on helping people be present and be changed and affected by their travel experience. I think for a long time, I've been interested in athletics my entire life. And for a long time, it was very goal driven. I need to get to this summit and I need to run this marathon. I need to do this, that, and the other. And as I've gotten older and worked on my mental health, I've found that you can be in the outdoors pretty much anywhere. You can step out onto your stoop and truly be present and be in the outdoors. And I've become much more interested in slow experiences and really being with myself and being affected by nature, and not caring about being able to post about it.
And I'm Dave, the director of operations for Root Adventures. And I guess like my love of the outdoors even goes back to childhood. I think I was pretty fortunate to have some amazing experiences with my family growing up, whether it's skiing or hiking, camping. and then I think as I got older, I don't know, I think that love of the outdoors and adventure just even expanded even more. So, I mean, definitely like that nostalgia and bringing up memories from my childhood and being with my parents too. Um, I don't know, just a sense of awe in a beautiful landscape, all the way to, I don't know, a sense of adrenaline and kind of seeing how hard I can push my body. And so there's so many different facets that I can kind of pick and choose what I'm in the mood for to explore that day.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you guys mentioned that you both help run and operate Route Adventures. So, do you mind just overviewing some of the things that you focus on with that company and how it fits into the category of adventure travel?
Sure. Root Adventures, as I mentioned, is focused on mindful travel. Um, Mindfulness can be misconstrued in a lot of ways. It can be one of those words like wellness. It's almost like a dirty word, like such a privileged word. But the way we look at mindfulness is living life in the here and now and noticing it and being a part of it. So we have tour leaders. All of our trips are group trips and we travel all around the world. We work really closely with our partners in each of the countries to ensure that every dollar that can stays in that country and supports that country. We try to make it easy for our clients to travel in a sustainable way without having to worry and examine all the pieces. You know, for instance, we include tips because tips are a huge part of people's salaries. And it's not in my opinion, equity is of the utmost importance. And so making sure that tips are included, they're getting a fair wage. We're not negotiating and trying to get the cheapest experience or trying to get the experience at the lowest price, but rather how can we pay all the people involved in this a salary that not only allows them to survive, but allows them to thrive. We are travel, no matter what level you're traveling at, it's a privilege. And if we're going to be going to these countries and taking from the land, from the people, experiencing the places that sustains them, then we need to show them respect and treat them with respect and ensure that they get to enjoy those places as well, because we are affording them that opportunity financially. And yeah, I forgot where I was going.
Dave, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I mean, I think the other thing that Root Adventures tries to do is really focus on transformational travel. So, you know, we kind of have this unofficial tagline of you know, the anti-bucket list. Like, if you want to go see Paris or Venice, like, no, we're not the travel company for that. And so rather than checking things off your list, what we strive for is how can we make that experience in that destination as powerful as possible, as meaningful as possible. So you might not see the most incredible sights, but maybe your interactions with the local indigenous community or getting off the beaten path, especially with these small groups that are always led by a route tour leader who helps facilitate this transformational and this powerful experience. And so that's really what we try to strive for, is maximizing that personal impact, rather than just getting that photo, that Instagram photo, and checking something off the list.
And to add on to that, when we say anti-bucket list, we don't necessarily mean we're not going to go to places that are on people's bucket list. It's more the idea that you go where you're called. You go where the opportunity is. Life is not about checking things off your list. Life is not about visiting a certain number of countries. That when you tell me how many countries you've been to, I know how much money you've spent, but I don't know how you've been affected by travel. So when we go to Peru, we're going to see Machu Picchu, but that's not ultimately our destination. Our destination is the present moment. So when we're going on these hikes that their partners have newly created, we found brand new trails where we walk through 3 different communities' land that we have helped them establish some safekeeping. So they now have a community organization that manages the lands together, but each individual person in that community owns a piece of that land that can now not be sold to a big corporation that's going to overtake it. So we try to think of everything in that realm. For me, the most transformational piece of travel is connection. And I like to say it's connection to land, connection to community, and connection to your deeper self. And the only way you can connect is if you can be there fully, thinking about all of your senses, listening, being curious. We all have these expectations when we go to places that we've thought of for years and years. And oftentimes they let us down. As Dave mentioned, we might miss some of the peak places, but I would argue that we're not missing the best places. We're missing the places that people told us are the best. So we really defer to the locals. When I meet a new partner, my first question to them is, hey, what's the itinerary that you've created that absolutely nobody will buy? Because you know far better than I do what's the best trip. And I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to appreciate that, and I'm going to work with you and trust you. And sure, there's 7 wonders of the world. Think about how many places you've been that are spectacular that nobody's heard about. And then the other part we do in anticipation of that transformational travel is we do a 12-week pre-trip program that focuses on our 4 pillars, which are community, sustainability, equity and inclusion, and mindfulness. And so we're really trying to prime the pump for this experience. When you go into something with intention, with knowledge of what you want to get out of it, it allows for more presence. All of our trips also are nature-based because, as we say, nature demands presence. So even though we have these beautiful mindfulness tour leaders, they're not sitting down and doing a formal meditation with you or doing a formal yoga class. We're being intentional and asking the locals, what are the things you do here? What are the things that help you feel more connected to the land, and really engaging in that way? And then ultimately our goal is to really help people cement these changes, all these things they've learned from these beautiful communities. We want to stay with them forever. But when you return home from something so moving and magical, the thing we kept hearing is it just fades away. It feels really good when I first get home, but then it fades away because nothing has changed here. But I've changed so much inside myself. And then you just get numb to it again. So we actually include a 6-week reintegration program to help people take these giant steps they've made on their trip and implement them into their own life and make them a normal part of their existence. Because as we see it, it's all about planting that seed and nurturing that seed.
Yeah, I love that framework. I think that it is unique in the travel industry, and kind of a good segue to kind of talk about what adventure travel is and like what are the other types of travel. Because I know that at Root Adventures, it like differs slightly still from other types of adventure travel because you have that more holistic framework and view in terms of mindfulness and sustainability. But I think it's important to, in this discussion, to kind of like broadly define adventure travel and then like the comparisons of other types of travel that people might be experiencing.
Yeah, I'll take that one. I think that the way I view adventure travel is a way to connect yourself to the places you are more deeply. So whether that's if you're doing a backpacking trip, or connecting to the land, or you're going to a different culture, connecting with the people. When we think about travel, a lot of times it's that Instagrammable moment. Can you take that picture? You go to that museum, you see that painting, but adventure travel is more of a discovery, whether it's a discovery of yourself or a discovery of new places. It's much more involved. And the word adventure can be a little intimidating to some people. So I encourage everybody to kind of open their eyes to what adventure really is. Adventure is a place where you feel a little uncomfortable. You know, maybe you're a quiet person who doesn't want to engage with a lot of people and you go on a group trip. That's an adventure in and of itself. And we really celebrate every level of adventure, wherever anybody is. that's valuable and important. And we're getting ourselves out of the comfort zone. And that's really where the change happens.
Yeah. And then I guess if we're zooming out then to look at the travel industry and tourism industry as a whole, there are obviously some glaring issues that people might be aware of, such as air travel and other types of things. But if we're looking at the travel industry, what do you guys think are some of like the predominant issues, environmentally and then societally?
Tackle that one. You could tell them maybe a bit about your background too.
Sure. So I've had a passion for sustainability for a long time, and I've worked in renewable energy. I've worked in recycling, and so I'm a pretty broad, set of experience when it comes to sustainability. When it comes to travel and the issues of sustainability, it's it's like one of those things where there's no way around the fact that it is a very carbon intensive activity. There's no way around the fact that sometimes the most amazing destinations will see a huge influx of people, and it can be detrimental to the site, to the environment, to the local communities. But it can also be really, really beneficial. So it can bring in a lot of funding, jumpstart an economy. And I think where the potential is, I think Costa Rica is kind of like the prime example of this. I think it's back in the early 90s. They realized they'd, had huge deforestation issues. They were trying to build their economy off agriculture, and they kept running into all these problems, landslides, things like that. And I'm like, hang on, this is not a path. It's not a sustainable path to just growing our economy. And what they realize is now instead, if we focus our attention and our money on protecting our valuable, incredible natural resources, the rainforest of Costa Rica, maybe we can monetize that in a more sustainable way and bring people down. And, I'd be curious to know, to be in those conversations back then, 30, 40 years ago, if they had an idea of like how transformative that decision could be. So not just for their country, but for the people who come and visit, to go ziplining through these pristine rainforests and some of the most ecologically diverse environments in the entire planet. So, it's pretty incredible. So travel is just this inherent give and take, kind of pros and cons. And so kind of closing the loop on where we think Weird Adventures fits into this, I think a lot of the tension when it comes to sustainability and travel, as well as in other industries, is about how do we minimize the negative impact? And I think that's important, but it's also, there's just natural limits. There's only so much you can do, especially when aviation is such a contributor. And instead, I think what we really try to emphasize at Weird Adventures is how do we actually maximize the positives? So when people come back to their normal lives, how does that positive impact carry forward in their behavior and how they vote, just different decisions that are made?
Yeah, bigger picture. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think ultimately it comes down to the community. So Costa Rica being a prime example, I think one of the most beautiful things that they've done in Costa Rica is they've involved the community, and they haven't made this specific laws. They've created opportunities, and these opportunities actually enrich people both in terms of the greenery and also financially. So if you don't build on your land, the government will pay you for that. And just thinking about these things from a more holistic standpoint, for instance, when you travel to countries with a lower GDP, and go to the lower, like the cheaper restaurants, you'll notice that the napkins we use here in the United States, they're twofold, right? They're full down to the quarter of their size. When you travel to these destinations, they actually hand cut them and you only get a quarter of a napkin. And just thinking about those little things, it's like, do I really need this napkin? Do I really need all this extra stuff? Can I navigate this with less? And a lot of times those adjustments have been made in those countries due to economics, but there's also that added benefit. And one of the things that I noticed is a lot of travelers, when they go abroad to places that don't have the same infrastructure we do, they'll complain about the litter on the ground. Here's the thing: litter doesn't do anything to the environment. It's the stuff that makes the litter. It's the humans that create the litter. It might not be as pretty to walk along a trail and see a lot of trash, but think about how much trash we're putting into the land, and we're just out of sight, out of mind. For me, when I walk down a trail and I see litter, actually, this is a perfect example. When I was walking in Guatemala, we did a trek from Antigua to Lake Atitlan. And one of the people on the trip was really bothered by the litter. So she asked if we could get trash bags. Each of us carried trash bags, and we kept adding to the trash bags. We got to the end of the trek, and there was nowhere to put the stuff. We literally didn't know what to do with our trash because they don't have that infrastructure. So I think going to these places, recognizing that they don't have the same systems that we have, but it doesn't mean that they care less. It's just, can you walk into that space and be curious and learn from what they're offering?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting perspective. And we've been talking a lot about international travel. So I kind of want to zoom in a little bit and talk about domestic travel. So I think one thing that a lot of listeners probably would, identify with is the fact that maybe they live in a mountain town, like a small tourist type town, and they don't love that tourism is a huge part of that economy. So I guess, how do people who are traveling kind of balance those interactions with the locals?
Hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to respect. I mean, unfortunately, I think like current state is really difficult, and I think living in a mountain town has become significantly more difficult because of ability to remote work. So there's people with significantly higher paying jobs living locally, and then just like the short-term rental market. So there's a lot of kind of big factors at play that make it difficult to live in a small town. So I can definitely understand this kind of angst. But I mean, I think for people who are visiting and coming into really any environment, I think it's just a matter of showing respect. And I think some of it comes down to just showing the same level of like gratitude and enthusiasm for that natural environment. The same reasons that people move there, the visitors are there to experience the same thing. Like we all have the same stoke on a powder day, for example. But it's just being, maybe putting in a little bit extra effort to find the less utilized trails, getting a little further out, and just, being mindful of your impact. Again, positive and negative. So how can you leave a overall positive impact after your visit?
And I think one of the biggest challenges here in the United States in terms of, say, going to national parks is a lack of education. And guiding around the world is looked at as this really beautiful career. Peru, for our guides, they go to a 4-year university, and then they have 5 years of being a secondary guide before they can even be a lead guide. So that's nearly a decade of education before they can even lead people. Whereas here in the United States, we're so focused on independence. We don't think about that community aspect. So the idea of going and getting a guide to go on a hike seems ridiculous, but it isn't. These guides, we have so many incredible guides here in the United States, and they are a wealth of information. So even us Coloradans who hike every weekend and think that we know everything about Leave No Trace, we know nothing compared to these guides. So I would say it would be lovely if there was more access for these guides to take people on these trips. So you show up at Glacier National Park and there's an option to go on a day hike with a guide. Why don't we have systems like that so they can learn that it's important to stay on trail, that it's important to dig a hole or pack it out? These are a lot of things. I genuinely don't think people go to these places and wreck them because they don't care. I genuinely think it's because they don't know. They don't know how to take care of these places. And it makes sense. We're just individuals. We're not meant to have an entire internet's worth of information in our brain. We're meant to be community driven. We're meant to have others show us the way and pick up the pieces of things that we don't fully understand. And I think when we think about going to those places like the mountain towns, just like David said, it's important for us to get curious, but I also think that it's important for the locals to get curious about the visitors because they might actually want to learn from you, and that education is invaluable.
Yeah, and to kind of like build on that, we're both like very experienced skiers, and our local mountain is Winter Park, and prior to having a kid of our own, we'd park on like the Mary Jane side, which is the more advanced side. There isn't really any base infrastructure, no hotels, anything like that. We always kind of like just dismiss the beginners over on the easy trails where the lodges are and all that, and kind of like really had a snotty attitude almost to that.
100%.
Which is, looking back on, I'm really kind of ashamed of. And so ever since having a young kid, our son is 7 now, and he'll do some ski lessons out of the base area. We'll take him up there on those easier runs. And, I've had more fascinating conversations taking the gondola up with, family from not Colorado, Florida or Texas, a very flat
Brazil,
state, where it might be, the 40-year-old dad's first time ever being in a chairlift, and he's actually kind of petrified of it. And how is it going to get down this mountain? And so, rather than having this elitist attitude towards these beginners, I've really started to lean in and appreciate and help, I don't know, just appreciate their enthusiasm that they have for seeing these sites for the very first time. The site that I've seen hundreds of times and don't even think about, they're in complete awe. And I think it's just been really magical to rather than look down on it, really like embrace it.
Yeah. And I think, that's kind of the joy of being a parent, right? Is you get to see the world through brand new eyes. But we have that. You don't have to be a parent to experience that. You just have to be curious. When we talk about equity and inclusion, my one rule that applies for every part of this movement is listen and believe. We're never going to see anything through other people's eyes, but we can listen. We can be curious. We can gain so much from that experience. I think it's just fascinating. I have people all the time ask me, what's my favorite destination? And I have no idea. Quite literally, I have no idea. And all I can say is it's the people. It's the locals. It's the people I travel with. I can do the same exact trail 100 times and see it completely differently. But my 20-year-old self couldn't do that. I'd done that, been there, done that. I didn't need any more. So I think just leaning into that curiosity of others and, again, recognizing that privilege. Some people, the most outdoor experience they're going to have is stepping outside and walking down the block. And that counts. We don't need to micromanage what an adventure is. Adventure is whatever it is to you. And I think it's Eckhart Tolle has this message about, if you're sitting in the middle of a mall, a busy mall with no wildlife, you're in nature because you are nature. We are a part of this. And I think that's the piece that we're really missing, is this reciprocity piece where humans are nature. We need to get ourselves more in rhythm with nature, more in rhythm with ourselves. We have so much stimuli everywhere that we don't even know what our own nervous system is doing, much less the rhythm of nature. So, having that curiosity and openness to have adventure right in front of you, to being present and watching the clouds and slowing down and understanding that just because somebody doesn't go as hard as you doesn't mean that they adventure less than you.
Yeah, different perspectives and kind of like bringing back that wonder that you probably had when you were younger. But like you said, there's a lot of noise happening. We get really distracted by our daily lives. And so I think a lot of times people use holiday or travel to hopefully slow down and take note and take advantage of that a bit more peace and like slowness in their life. And so I guess if we are kind of returning back to the sustainability aspect of the conversation, like since you've been working in the tourism industry for a while, have you noticed that certain types of travel have a bigger impact than others environmentally?
I mean, certainly the bucket list travel plays a huge role. So a lot of times people want to go to Peru and see Machu Picchu, and they're like, oh, well, Ecuador is right there. I'll just add on the Galapagos. First of all, it's not right there. They're two large countries. So you're taking a big airliner to get to the next two airliners. You're adding on 4 flights total to add this destination. And you're probably doing it without any awareness that it's creating more damage to the earth. So these trips that have people bouncing from place to place to place, like get as many things off the list as possible, that's really harmful. And it also makes it really difficult to find that presence and to be changed by it.
Yeah, honestly sounds exhausting.
Yeah. And then, everybody always brings up cruise ships are, the worst form of travel. I've personally never been on one. I can't imagine that it would be my cup of tea. But they are a really good example of what over travel can do to a community. I mean, just go to a port that is a stop for a cruise ship and just watch how it shifts. The second all these people get off that boat, that community is long gone. And it is, I won't say American because it's a very diverse group that takes cruises, but it completely erases and destroys that community. And yeah, that's all
Cruise ships are like a whole other rabbit hole that you can go down as far as like the impact that they have, I think.
Yes.
And I know one thing that a lot of people are going to be thinking as we're talking, especially about air travel, are carbon credits. And so I would love to talk about how effective carbon credits are. I know that this is like it can go very deep on this topic, so we can try to be brief, but that might be harder said than done. So yeah, what is your take on carbon credits, and like, are they effective? Should people be using them and kind of leaning into them or not?
You want to take this?
Sure, I'll take this one. So yeah, so unfortunately, we don't believe much in the effectiveness of carbon credits, and there's a couple of reasons why. And actually, there's a good John Oliver segment on carbon credits that kind of exposes all the loopholes and kind of hypocrisy in it. And so it's a problem area for a lot of reasons. I think it has great intentions and could be amazing. However, I mean, there just isn't enough oversight. There's other issues. I mean, for one, renewable energy has just come down in cost so much. That the general idea is that these projects would be invested in anyways. We don't need a carbon credit pool of money to help spur that. And so we're basically like helping utilities that would do this stuff anyways because it's in their own financial best interest. There's issues with forests, whether it would have been protected or not, and even the health of forests that can be planted. A lot of times they're very homogeneous and really aren't a healthy forest environment. So just when it comes down to like the technicalities of carbon credits, I don't think they work. But I think there's another factor that I think might be even more problematic, and that it's this idea of we can just outsource our sustainability. So this idea we can make any choice in the world, and like, well, if I pay a couple extra bucks, it's all good. And I think that really unfortunately allows people to, you know, sidestep that responsibility that's needed. You know, this being forced to take a harder look at, this is the choice that I'm making. This is the environmental impact it'll have. Again, how can I make sure that I do the best I can with this experience, rather than just being like, yeah, there's a negative carbon impact, but I sent in a little bit more money, so it's okay. Now I don't need to think about it anymore. And so when I think about sustainability and what it's going to take for us to like make meaningful changes, it is that hard introspection, really, of what does sustainability mean to each of us as individuals. And unfortunately, it's a lot more complicated than just writing a check.
And I mean, another element to the negative of carbon credits is even the president of United has said that they are useless, because the amount of carbon credits that have been purchased already, there's not enough land in the entire world to plant the trees for those. So it's really just a fable. We're really just trying to make ourselves feel good. And who's getting this money? I mean, there are billionaires that have their own private land that call that the sustainable land. Like, they're not going to develop. They were never going to develop it anyway, but they're just taking our money just to take our money. So I think it's important to be really curious. And I would love to see a program like this work. But to Dave's point, we need, the onus is on us, and we need to be a lot more thoughtful. You know, again, I think it all comes back to that bucket list. It's, do you need to see all the things on your bucket list, or could you maybe choose one and be there fully, be fully present, really enjoy it, take a month, be there if you have that capacity. The movement piece is not so necessary. Another word we like to use in describing our trips is slow travel, being where you are. You know, you go to Europe, you don't need to see 6 countries just because you can. I mean, also, that's a lot of travel time. Is that how you want to spend your entire vacation? So just thinking about new ways to explore the world and limit the distance you travel.
Yeah, and that kind of, I guess, leads into the next question, which is like, what are the alternatives? So like you mentioned, maybe choosing one destination and staying there for the entirety of your trip. Or I guess like for me, I've been trying to lean more into like local travel or like local adventures, because I do live in like a pretty touristy destination, and there's so many things that I didn't even know were here or that I had never seen. So yeah, what would you say is like, what are the alternatives to just buying a carbon credit and flying to 7 different countries because those are the things that you were told should be seen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge proponent of adventuring in your own backyard. I think there's a ton of amazing things you can do. I like camping with our son in our own backyard, for example. I think that can be a ton of fun. You don't have to drive anywhere. But some of the other things that we try to focus and kind of steer our clients into different ways of thinking, for example, is, I mean, I think a lot of us are this way. Whenever we sign up for a new trip, or maybe a new adventure, one of the exciting things is going to your local REI and kind of picking out the new gear that you need. And that was always kind of a fun thing to do, but it of course comes with huge environmental impacts and it's financial impacts to your wallet too. And so one of the things we started doing with our clients is actually reimbursing clients if they need gear repaired before their trip. So if they need to take their boots to their local cobbler, we'll reimburse them for that. And same with if they take public transportation like light rail to the airport. So it's not much, but it's helping to like slowly change that way of thinking of, I don't need to buy something new. That jacket I've had, that'll do just fine. I just need to get that, zipper fixed, for example. So it's just trying to shift the mindset a little bit more.
Yeah. And we also, for our trips in particular, we include all rentals. And if somebody comes to me saying they need socks and a jacket, I will source it. I will find one for you to borrow. And we really encourage that community aspect. Like, we don't all need to have a lawnmower. Why don't we have one for the entire block? And we have our days that we use it. Why do we all feel this need to own every single thing that we use once or twice a year? So we do include all of the rentals, and I am very available to help people source borrowing things, anything of that nature. Because I think that actually is a much bigger hit to the environment than people even realize, just those REI trips.
Yeah, overconsumption is something that I think is very normalized, unfortunately. So hopefully consumers can kind of like push that away and kind of be more mindful in their consumption, like you guys are saying. And
I've always
so,
found it, sorry, I was just gonna say, I always found it ironic that there is so much consumption in that outdoor space. It's like, and I mean, I love brands like Patagonia, and many, many others. I think they are doing great things, but it's, it's like the ad that you mentioned earlier about, don't buy this jacket. And it's so true. It's like, we don't need the latest pair of skis or the latest mountain bike. Sometimes you actually have a more interesting adventure on older gear. And if we're all out there for the adventure, maybe having that older technology might even be create better memories.
Yeah, and I think there's been some really beautiful movements about, why do we need this fancy gear to go on a hike anyway? Like, these used to be called walks, and you can go in your jeans and flip-flops if you want to, but there's this sense of superiority and judgment that is in the outdoors. So we really encourage you to, if you see somebody out there in jeans and a t-shirt, they're badass. Celebrate them. That's amazing. They're not sticking to your standards, and they're getting out there because they want to be out there. Every time, outdoor retailer used to be held here, and I would have almost a panic attack walking through there. Like, everybody is wearing brand new clothes, and these are expensive clothes. Why isn't there duct tape on everybody's jacket? These are for the outdoors. This is for fun. Fix your stuff and make it last.
that reminds me, there's like this social media trend that I don't know if it's still happening, but it was for several weeks, where they were like, it was a couple and they would say, put on your most expensive outfit, we're going out. And they'd put on like their ski jacket and like pants and stuff like that. And I was like, that's so true.
Yep.
It's the most expensive thing you probably own.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Okay. So I digress a little bit with that, but if you were, say you were at a conference or something like that, and you were speaking to a room of folks that work in adventure travel or tourism in general, what would you say they could do or start to do to help their companies run more environmentally focused trips and help their guests be more mindful on those adventures?
I would say it all comes down to education. I mean, if you can educate your clients on the importance of a change in mindset, or I'm sorry, your employees on a change of mindset, your employees are then going to tell your clients it comes from the top. If you have people working for you, educate them. Let them know that the fanciest gear is not a requirement. There's that saying, there's no bad weather, just bad gear. It's such a privileged thing to say, really. Sometimes people can't afford the good gear. And so taking away the shame of being new, taking away the shame of not having the right thing, I think is a really valuable piece. Travel is not sustainable. It just isn't. So we need, if we're going to be burning all this carbon, we better learn something from it. It better change us. Humans are naturally exploratory. It's a big part of our entire history. And I don't think that people should feel guilty about doing this, taking these experiences, if they are actually allowing themselves to fully be there. And so I would encourage companies to work on the education piece, educating their employees, having the employees educate the people, and maybe let's steer away from doing those carbon credits. Let's put the onus back on the consumer. It is on them. And okay.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to say, slow down, do less. And, I think we've had clients who will look at the itinerary and see like an open block of time, maybe on their first day in the city, and they'll freak out like, what? I need something planned during this time. But I think just walking around a new city or sitting at a cafe and just, people watching or trying to speak with locals, if you know a little bit of the language, that could be a more impactful and memorable experience than jetting from museum to museum to archaeological site. Just sit and be and do less and watch.
And practice that at home as well. I think goals are lovely and beautiful, but they need to be for yourself. There's this, especially with Instagram, everybody's always trying to prove something to somebody. Nobody cares. You're the only one that cares. So really examine it. Is hiking that mountain for you, or is it so you can tell other people you did it? Because speaking from personal experience, I've done a lot of things for other people, and it never fulfilled me. One of the questions I really try to grapple with when you think about travel is a lot of times people don't like their life at home. And so they go travel as an escape and they want a break. I encourage you to examine your life before you go travel. Examine what you can fix in your home life. What can you do to make that the place that you love most? Because a week away, 2 weeks away, a year away will not change that. And trust me, I have been known to escape. I've moved a million times. I've traveled. I've done all the things. And that life was always there for me, no matter what. And I've done so much work within, so much mental health work, that now my favorite place to be is with me. And now when I think about travel should be enriching. It should not be an escape. It should make what you already have even better. It shouldn't be a way to get away from what you already have.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a beautiful message. And I would love for more people to take that approach to travel and their daily life when they are participating in, micro adventures around their town or even in their own backyard. So how can listeners learn more about you guys, your philosophies, and also check out your trips at Root Adventures?
It's quite easy. We're at rootadventures.com. Adventures plural, ROOT. I once had an ROUTE, so I like to clarify. But yeah, we're at rootadventures.com, and all of our trips are listed on there. I can also do custom things if that's, if you want to do something locally. I am very generous with my time. So if you just want to call, I have lots of people asking me how to start a travel company or how do they get into this industry. I've been in it for 20 years. I love this industry, and I think there's a lot of positive movement in the industry to really affect change. Yeah.
And then I was just going to say, to maybe for readers or listeners who want to dive deeper into this mindset of exploring locally. I heard you mention micro adventures, which was popularized by Alistair Humphreys in the UK, and then there's also an Australian YouTuber I think is amazing and is popularized the idea of backyard adventures named Bo Miles. And so I think between those two, it really helps facilitate this change in mindset of I can be anywhere and have an awesome adventure.
Yeah, one of the things my other business partner, and I talk about a lot is the magic of the mundane. And so we have this idea that we call it mundanely magical Mondays, where you think of something so boring. You're like, I'm going to go look at a blade of grass for an entire minute and see what is so beautiful about it. I'm going to go stand on the cement and see if I notice different feelings within my foot, or I'm just going to close my eyes and listen. Whatever it is, I mean, the mundane, getting your teeth cleaned, not fun. But if you allow yourself to explore the amazing technology and all that they've done to get us to the place of being able to keep our teeth in a lifetime, that's pretty spectacular. Everything, traffic, getting your oil changed, all of that, it can be an experience if you allow it to be.
Thanks for listening. And if you like what you hear, let me know. Leave a review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Instagram at outdoor.minimalist.book, on YouTube, or subscribe to our weekly newsletter at theoutdoorminimalist.com. For even more updates, other educational resources, and to help build an outdoor community with the shared goal to create a better outdoor space as we recreate.